I'd like to do is just run down the members of the board to be sure that we have a correct list. Is Richard there, Jim?
Yes, he is.
Jim? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
he is.
Very good. Leon Johnson? Leon, you're here?
I do not see Leon.
Is Leon here?
No,
Okay, let us know, Jim, if he comes in.
Yes, I will.
Okay, Dave Fredrickson? Thank you. Dave Fredrickson?
He's here.
Thank you. Dave Durfee?
Present.
Dave, I've seen you, so I know
Yep.
you're here. Ed Letourneau? Nelson Brownell?
Ed's here. Ed's here.
Nelson's here?
No, Ed is here.
Ed is here.
Is that right, Ed?
Nelson Brownell?
Yes,
Yes,
you
he's
asked if I
present.
was here, but I took a moment to unmute it.
Okay. Nelson Brownell. Jackie Kelly.
I'm here.
Jackie, okay,
I'm here.
thank you. Fran Kinney.
I'm here.
Thank you, Jackie. Fran Kinney.
Here.
Thank you. Amy,
Here.
very good. Carrie Bond.
Here.
Ron Higgins. Ron Higgins. All right, we have a quorum. I think we can begin. What I'd like to do this evening is, as we have in the last few meetings, to ask the superintendent to give his report first, and hopefully that'll answer some questions that people in the general comment area of the meeting, it may answer their questions before. So I'd like to open this meeting with the superintendent's report. Jim?
Yep. I just let Leon and Steve Nixon into the meeting. My report is brief.
Okay, good.
Actually. We are in the beginning of, well, not in the beginning, we're in phase 2, but we are actively planning for phase 3. And just to remind everybody that is we would have all students here 4 days a week. 5 isn't going to happen until the state of emergency is lifted. There are challenges to go, and it's going to be March before we feel that we can get to phase 3. And you've heard me say this before. Originally, the date was January, and it was probably even earlier before that. But the challenges that we have start with busing. That the most we can put on a bus is 24 students, and some buses that are smaller, it's even less. The physical distancing limits stay in place right now. So for the grade levels of your school, except for the 6th grade, that's 6 feet. And that's going to be impossible to do, to bring 100% of your students back 5 days a week with those limits in place. And probably the most disappointing for me is Vermont's decision that the vaccine was not given a priority to educators as it is in some of our neighboring states, New York, Massachusetts. I think that would have been critical for limiting fears and getting everyone back into the building. So I don't know, when everyone will be vaccinated and when we will actually be into phase 3, but our goal is a date in March for 4 days a week for all students. The governor and the Secretary of Education has said that their goal is all students are in buildings. I'm sure you've heard this, by April 1, 5 days a week. That is a challenge that I think is going to be very difficult for us to achieve, but we will continue to look into that. The mold remediation program is done. It's completed. We still do not have the report back from the engineer for the ventilation upgrades to the building. They were challenged. My understanding, their engineering staff was challenged with COVID and the crimes for some of their staff who have been exposed to quarantine prior to coming to work for us. So that has really had an impact on that result. So I do not have a cost estimate for you tonight for what that project is going either entail or what it will cost. But as I've said to you before, it is not going to be an inexpensive project. But I do think at least in the 84 wing, it's going to be crucial, because if we don't do something with the ventilation, mold is going to be a continuing problem in that wing, because we're not evacuating the humid, damp air, particularly from the summer, and putting dehumidifiers, which our maintenance crew diligently empty every twice a day on the schedule. There's too much possibility for things to go wrong, everything from power failures to a schedule missed to empty the buckets, so that at least that building, we're going to have to, I feel, we're going to have to come up with a more permanent solution. There are still portable filtration units available if there's areas that are requested, and that's through those requests can go through the Director of Facilities, and we're committed to purchase more if more are available. So and the only other thing I want to talk about, and the chair may bring this up under his report, is we do have a tentative agreement for this year with both unions. They have not ratified it yet, because my understanding is their Uniserv rep is still reviewing and change. We do not have a clean document back for them to vote and ratify on. I'm still hopeful that that will be next week. That's the scheduled date that they're going to schedule, I think, votes on 3 different days. And then what my intent would be to the first week of February to call all boards together for a round robin board meeting where we'll have one explanation to all boards of what the settlement was, and then do, but one it as separate meetings so that you all can vote at the same night to get that contract approved. So it's not etched in stone yet, because we won't schedule that meeting until I hear that ratification has taken place. But I believe it's taken far longer to have that tentative approval that we had done before the holidays committed to writing that could then be brought to a vote and ratification by the union. So it was tossed back and forth between our attorney and the NEA Uniserv rep. So it's not an issue with local leadership. It's not an issue with administration. It's lost in the quagmire of the legal world right now. So no further progress on that. Other than that, I'd entertain any questions that anyone would have for me.
Thank you, Jim. If there are no questions, I'd like to move ahead. Assuming there are no other questions, I've asked Kerry to report on the Charter Committee's report. Kerry, I know you're there.
Yeah, hi. So I'll just give a quick overview, and then Dave Durfee's going to talk about what he's been working on. So the charter, or the Articles of Agreement Committee, have met a couple of times. I think last time I explained where we left off and how we were going to try to reach out to local legislators, as that was the next step to possibly change our Articles of Agreement to add a recall provision. So we've reached out to local legislators about this endeavor. Dave Durfee is going to speak about his efforts to craft some legislation. And I think there's also another possibility that he's discussed with legislators. So go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Kerry. And just so you know, I don't seem to be able to raise my hand. So if anybody is looking in the future for questions, maybe I don't know if it's limited to me, but I'll probably raise my real hand rather than raise my blue hand if I need to be recognized. But as Kerry said, last month we had heard from our attorney that, well, I'll back up a little bit. Prior to last month, we had learned from our attorney that contrary to what we had been told originally, the district, the MAU district doesn't have a charter. We have articles of agreement, and that meant that we weren't in a position where we could add a provision that would allow for the recall of a board member. And our attorney advised that we didn't have the legal right to do that. The only way that could happen would be for a change in the state law. So I, in my representative role, got a second opinion from the legal counsel in the legislature, who said yes, that's the way they interpreted it as well. So between last meeting, this meeting, I put a request in for a bill to be drafted that would change state law to allow for any school district in the state, not just ours, but for any school district to add a provision specifically to allow for the recall of an elected board member under rather, I will say, rather strict conditions that mirror what the town of Bennington has in its charter. And I think we talked about this maybe at an earlier meeting, but essentially it would require a petition signed by 30% of the registered voters in the district, and then a 2/3 vote of whoever chose to vote to change that provision. I'm sorry, to remove a board member. So there are a couple steps here, and as you can see, I'm already confusing myself because there are several steps that would be necessary to get to that point. The first is the legislature would have to change the law. And as you probably know, that means both the House and then the Senate, and then ultimately the governor would need to sign it. And sort of, if you want to think about a timeline, the legislature meets between now and May, and typically the governor signs bills in June and they go into effect in July, sort of a standard way of doing things. At that point, with that law in place, our district or any district could then begin the process to change the articles in this way. And that would require votes in all the towns in our district. And realistically, that might not happen until November. It's hard to say whether there'd be a special election set up, but one way to sort of think again about it in a time frame is that might happen in November. And then if that were to pass, if all the towns agreed, then there could be the kind of petition process or the board initiated process that we had talked about when we thought we had a charter, which meant there'd be a couple of public meetings to address the issue. And eventually the petition would, the process would also require the Agency of Education to approve the change to the articles that we were outlining. So the long and short of it is, this is not a straightforward process. I think that's probably clear. Not a quick process either. And I know that there are some who have been arguing for quick action, that there's urgency. Our hands are a little bit tied. So let me stop there and see if there are questions from other board members, and I'm happy to try and answer them.
Are there any questions from board members on what Dave and Kerry? Yes? Please
I'm not
identify
seeing
yourself.
anybody with a hand raised.
Any hands?
So,
Okay.
So Tim, I'll just wrap up then by saying
Yes.
that they put in a request to have a bill drafted. That may take a couple of weeks before something comes back. When we have a draft, then I think the committee, the three of us who have been on the committee, would probably go back to the other legislators in the local delegation and have a conversation with them. I should also say there's no guaranteeing that even the committees of jurisdiction in the Senate and the House will feel any urgency in taking this up. There's a lot going on right now that affects those committees. And the fact that we're working remotely has slowed and will continue to slow everything down, as you can imagine. So I just wanted to be upfront about that and be realistic about it.
We all appreciate efforts in this, Dave, and thank you very much. It sounds to me like it's a multi-step process, and the first one is to get that draft bill, and we'll just see how that comes along. If there are no other questions, I'd like to move along. I gather there are none. We're open now for public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment at this time?
You see Mary Jo's hand is up.
Very good. Are you doing it, Jim? Or
Yes, I am today. Yep, Frank is not here
yeah, I
today.
mean, okay. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is
Can
Mary
you
Jo.
unmute her or?
Me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. My name is Mary Jo Kwiatek. I apologize for a buzzing you might hear. It's my computer. I am a teacher at the high school and a community member. For the past several months, I've been coming to this board to express my anger and disappointment over board member Ed Letourneau's hate speech on social media, as I've done in the past. At last month's meeting, Chris Hansen, a teacher at the high school, very eloquently spoke of the difficulty of speaking up at a board meeting. Also at last month's meeting, board member Fran Kinney brutally illustrated that point by admonishing me, Mia Schultz, and the community at large for doing just that. Although Mr. Kinney's disdain for teachers has long been established.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me. This public comments are not meant and will not be allowed to make personal comments about any individual. What they are is an informational process by which you can bring points of interest to the board. But
Okay, well,
we will not accept personal comments about them.
But the personal comments were made about me last month by Mr. Kinney, and I was responding to them. Is that not allowed?
No, it is not.
Okay, so on the record, board members can make personal comments about the community, but
I'm not, excuse me.
I'm just trying
not
to
really
understand.
sure about the personal. Board members may not make personal comments about other members either without being addressed by the chair. That is not something that is reserved just for members of the public. Board
Okay, well-
members are not allowed during the public comment or any other place to
All right,
make
well, that happened last
personal
month.
comments.
Okay, well, that happened last month.
If it did, it shouldn't have. I apologize.
Okay, I guess I'm done.
You finished, Mary Jo?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Raise your hand and I'll call on you. All right. I'm not seeing any hands up, but some people have their cameras off. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Jim, is the process pretty obvious
Yeah.
as to what
Yeah,
they
I'm
have to
flipping-
do to be recognized?
Yeah, if they raise their hand or use the hand signal on their screen, I would see it, but I'm flipping
Okay.
back and forth between both screens and I do not see it, but I'll ask again, is one last time, anyone else wish to be heard during public comment? I'm not seeing any, Tim.
If not, then I think we will move it. Thank you, Jim. I think we'll move ahead. I know we'll move ahead. The next item on the agenda is finance. We have a budget discussion, and to let you know that the finance committee did meet and discussed a couple versions of the budget presented to us by Renee and others. The committee will recommend to the board. How do we identify this? Just as the first draft, Renee, what's the best way to do that?
Tim, I have
Maybe
it.
the best thing to do, Renee, is
I have it posted. I asked Amy to post it with the meeting packet as draft 3.
as draft 3. Okay, it's draft 3. If you are unable to bring it up, Renee, would you just give us a short description or a brief description of that budget, and then we will be sure to give board members a chance for questions after that. But I would like to remind everybody that it was unanimous opinion of the Finance Committee to recommend to the board the approval of a budget that Renee has identified as draft 3. Go ahead, Renee.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see what should be just a title page? Yes, I'm hoping so.
Yes.
See it?
Okay, normally it outlines in green, but I don't have that now, so, okay. I'm not going to go through line by line, as the chair asked me to briefly review. Essentially what we have before you is a budget that's just a little over $28.5 million, which represents a 2.53% increase over the current year's budget. As usual, I met with all the administrators and incorporated what they determined to be their needs for next school year. It does not include any new positions, but some shuffling of positions. And then actually position reductions for some that were and have been vacant. We have some grant funding that's expiring, so we added some funding for some building-based planning, and then incorporated some equipment replacements which are needed for the grounds and maintenance crews. So those are really the biggest factors that are going on. Some of the factors are known and some are not. We know that we have collective bargaining agreements that are to be negotiated for FY22, but we have factors in for possible increases there. We do know that we're going to be looking at increases to our health insurance premiums, and those are ranging between 8.3% and 18.5%. So we have factored those in. These rates have not yet been approved by the Department of Financial Regulation, but historically, at least as long as I've been in this position, pretty much the rates that VHI presents to DFR, the Department of Financial Regulation, typically are approved. So those factors have been included in the budget as well. The SVSU revised their budget yesterday, and all the assessments have been adjusted within the budget that we have before us here. The Southwest Tech tuition is also set, and there are some other minor adjustments for contracted services, utilities, software licenses, things of that nature, but they're pretty minimal. But all in all, the administrators feel that this budget supports their needs for next year. And as the chair mentioned, the Finance Committee has reviewed this a couple of versions. We did discuss possible reductions to the fund balance, which you would see here on line 13 as a contribution to the reserve fund. Ultimately, the decision was made not to use any of that available fund balance, but rather use that to offset the expenses and try to keep our projected tax rates as low as we could. And the chair also mentioned that this the committee is supporting this version of the budget as well. So in addition to that, just a couple of things, we have some uncontrollable factors, our equalized pupils, the homestead property yield, common level of appraisal. All these items are factors that come into the tax rate calculations. And the Southwest Vermont Union Elementary School District voted on their revised budget yesterday. So that, coupled with this version of the Mount Anthony budget and all the other factors that we know of today, which are subject to change. I know I'm just sliding back here, there's another data collection going on right now for equalized pupils, which closes at the end of this week. So we may see slight changes there. The homestead property yield is a figure that's voted on by the legislature later in the spring. And then the common level of appraisal is a study, a statewide study that's conducted by the Department of Taxes and Property Valuation on an annual basis. And if you go to the packet that I put together, the full packet, believe the last page of it is just a representation of the changes in the CLA, or common level of appraisal, which is really contributing to what we're seeing for some of these potential tax rates. So with SVU ESD and Mount Anthony, with everything as we currently know it today, Bennington is just under a 2-cent increase. Pownell is about 1 3/4 decrease. Shaftesbury, about 6 cents, a little over 6 cent increase. And this is mainly contributing or attributed to a change in CLA. The CLA has decreased significantly for Shaftesbury, as well as the Shaftesbury ID district. And then Woodford is about 1.5 cents. I did not include what the projected tax rates could be for the North Bennington graded school district, because they're meeting tomorrow. And I expect some more work to be done on that budget. So those are still to be determined. So all in all, just going back, essentially what the committee would be asking the board to consider is approval of this budget, which is $28,574,267.
Are you going to do the revenue section also, Renee, before we open for questions?
I didn't include a slide for that, Tim, but I can certainly pull it up if you'd like me to do
Yeah,
that.
I think that would be good. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, just gonna bear with me for a second, because it's a different file.
Well, while she's doing that, most of you are aware of the common level of appraisal. And basically, that is that the state takes a look at the values of the property within the town. And if the values of the property are less than what they consider a reasonable rate, then they take that into consideration. If the values are lower, then they also take that into consideration, and that affects the tax rate. And just the number of students that each town has obviously affects the amount of money that town will contribute to the running of Mount Anthony. And the last one is the amount of money that the state, through from the homestead yield, the amount of money that they get from that is very crucial to the amount of extra money that has to come from each town to make up the total amount of money that's needed to run the school. So there are 3 factors, as Renee has produced there, that are essential to determining what the tax rate will be. Unfortunately, we don't know what any of those figures are at this time. Well, the CLA, we have a pretty good idea. Okay, thank you, Renee. There we go.
Sure, yep. So this is what we have for the revenue budget. Pretty much everything's level funded with the exception of the fund balance. We're still waiting for our draft audits to come in for FY20, but based on the internal calculations generated by folks in my office, we're thinking that the fund balance is going to be just over 2 million. So I'm carrying right now just a placeholder of 2 million for that fund balance. And as you can see, that the line that I have highlighted here, the general state support grant, this is essentially the demand that we're placing on the education fund. And you can see it's only an increase of 0.17%, which is good because at the outset, the Agency of Education, I think, was anticipating, roughly statewide an overall increase of 3.75%. So with our budgets coming in below that, or the demand on the education fund being lower, we may see that the legislature can uptick that property yield figure, which would then just, allow our tax rates to fall a little bit more.
I would like to address the fund balance issue. Having a fund balance that we are going to contribute to adjusting to keep the tax rate reasonable is something that is not sustainable. And one of the things that this board did 2 years ago or so is that they had an article that was approved by the voters to be able to take some of that fund balance surplus and put it into our budget, whereby we could then use that money in the future to offset the expense of running the school. This year, it was felt by the committee with some consideration that we needed to put everything we possibly could into reducing or keeping the tax rate as low as possible. Now, what that means is, in the future, is it realistic to assume that we will have a fund balance of $2 million each year to offset the increase of running the school, any increases we have running the school? Basically, it is not good fiscal policy to run a surplus that large, and the auditors have pointed that out. I just want to be sure that everybody realizes that in the future, this is something that we are going to have to address, and we should address. And the consequences of not doing that in the long run are going to result in years of having a large amount of money that has to be raised through the property tax. I just want to point that out. Are there any general questions on the budget? Any members of the committee would like to make a comment on it?
Tim,
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment.
Good.
I'm not much of a computer person, but this morning I faithfully checked my computer and looked over the board meeting. And then at about 4 o'clock, I turned the thing on again. And that's when I got all this budget stuff. Now, is it just me? But between 4 o'clock and this meeting, that doesn't give you much time to study that. Does anybody else have that problem?
Well, I didn't have the problem because even though I'm not on that committee, I tuned into it because I had an interest in it. And so I did have the papers almost like 4 weeks ago, I think, or 3 weeks ago. It's changed several times, but the bottom line is I think I got the papers and I'm not on the committee. So maybe you didn't get the papers that happened a couple of weeks ago.
I'm not sure.
I think I did send out.
Renee, would you like to answer that, please?
I believe the draft 2 did get sent out. I think I emailed the full board right before the finance committee, but that was last week. This one I just had posted. So essentially draft 3 is what version 2A was in the information that was distributed last week. So the budget really hasn't changed. It was just variations of playing with reduction of the fund balance. So the expenditures are the same as they were last week.
In the future, Dave, I know that those figures were sent out in time for the finance committee meeting, and all board members should have received them. Now, somehow or other, it may not have gotten to your computer or you missed it. But
Tim,
we do make.
My point is, I had those, and then at 4 o'clock, I had another set of stuff come in.
Well, basically.
And I'm not sure whether it was the same or what. I hoped it was the same, but my point is at 4 o'clock, that's kind of doesn't leave me much time to look it over.
Very good. It's a good point. Thank you. We'll take that into consideration. Are there any other questions?
I have one more question. I forgot what the bottom line was,
Bottom line in terms of what, Jackie?
the tax.
There is no bottom line because we don't really, I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, so in other words, how will this affect the town tax
Well,
for Bennington?
sure. There are factors that we really don't know right now. We can make an estimate, but we really don't know because of those three factors that we talked about earlier. The CLA, the number of students, and the yield, the homestead yield. We don't have we don't have some of those figures at this time, and therefore we can't be 100% accurate as to what that tax rate would be. Renee, would you like to just go over, you have here somewhere that sheet that shows the tax rate per town?
This is also included in the packet. It's a lot of math on this spreadsheet.
Right. But Jackie, did you see?
Well, I just want to know the percent that will be added to the town tax so that people have a good idea when they come out of this meeting of what they can expect to be taxed for in November.
So Jackie, it's line 14 here on the sheet, or if you're looking at the PDF online, line 14 of probably the second to last page of the packet. So for Bennington, at least at this point right now, the estimate would be 0.0172 cents as a tax increase, or the rate of $1.5575 for Bennington. But again, we know that the equalized pupils, so all of these numbers up here at the top of the sheet pull down, and we have to basically take the Mount Anthony budget and apply the percentage of pupils that are attending Mount Anthony schools. We apply that percentage to the budget. And then the percentage of pupils that are either going to SVU ESD or North Bennington graded school district, we apply those percentage. So it ends up being a blended rate. But another factor in here, and it's a big one, is the rate that's set by the legislature, this homestead property yield. And if this number changes, which has historically over the past few years, ends up a little bit higher, all of these tax rates are actually going to go down. So at this point, we're just using the best information that we have available to us to provide these estimates.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Tim, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Ask
Yeah,
a question?
definitely. Yeah.
I think we heard during the committee meeting last week that staffing levels in both buildings are essentially budgeted at the same numbers that we've had this current year. And is that, so I just wanted to confirm that's correct.
Well,
Renee or somebody?
Yeah, what's happened is that we didn't fill some positions last year, and therefore we had more positions in our budget last year than we actually ended up having. And therefore there has been in terms of the budget, there has been a reduction in the number of people, but that's it. Renee, isn't that about right as we go through this?
Yeah, specifically in the narrative that I have included in the packet, there's some specifics there about a vacant school to work teacher, teaching position at the high school. That's proposed to be migrated over to a tech education teacher to assist with students being able to obtain their graduation requirements. We proposed to elevate a groundskeeper position to a grounds foreman to cover both campuses. The academic mentoring program was oversaw by a licensed teacher. That position has been vacant, so we did actually remove that from the budget. And then there were some adjustments to the high school math, science, and social studies departments to level them all at 10 FTE each, which does make a net reduction in some of those departments.
Good, thank you. Just relevant to the tax rate conversation that we were just having and Jackie's question, there was, in the timing of our meeting tonight is not ideal. Yesterday, the state revised its forecast, its revenue forecast, and I suspect, Renee, in the next day or two, although maybe things take a little bit longer than that, but somebody's going to give you a new, much better looking number for that yield. And the Banner actually had a nice article on it today. And that will mean lower, directionally anyway, lower tax rates. I don't know how to quantify it exactly, but it looks like it could be significant. And it happens every year. The state updates its forecast just about the same time that we're settling our budget, but there's not enough time to really work it in, unfortunately.
That's true, Dave, but some of that optimistic viewpoint from the state was on federal funds coming in. And of course, that isn't signed and sealed and delivered yet. So I'm encouraged by the thought that we may have a greater yield than a greater amount of money in the state than we thought we had originally. But I don't want to count on it until we actually see it. And you're just right. We really won't know until May, really, what that figure is.
Well, that's probably wise not to count on it, but I think we can be encouraged anyway by what we heard yesterday.
Yes, definitely. And thanks for bringing that up, Dave. Are there any other questions on the budget?
I have two quick questions. Did I understand that spreadsheet correctly that we're carrying a $2 million in a contingency fund?
No, we're not. There are two types of funds that we have. One is the contingency fund, and we have, I think it's $300,000 in that, as we have in the past, for situations that arise that we haven't anticipated. The fund balance by legislation says that money left over after the fiscal year is completed, any money left over must be applied to reduce the tax, must be applied as income to next year's budget. So when we have a fund balance or a budget surplus or whatever we want to call it, that money by statute has to be applied to next year's income. Isn't that right, Renee? I think that's right.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
But as you did point out, Tim, a few years ago, we did have that ballot article that allows the board at their discretion annually to review how much of a fund balance there is, and then possibly take some of that fund and move it into a reserve fund, which we can use for capital improvements. We can use it in the future for tax stabilization. But as we pointed out earlier, the committee decided that this would not be the year to try to reduce that fund balance, and we should use the full amount to offset the expenses.
Okay, and the fund balance is 300,000?
The contingency is 300,000. So that's a budgeted expenditure. It's, as Tim pointed out, the kind of, what if. Yep.
Second question is, when do we have to approve this to get it warned? We
really should approve it tonight because there is a deadline. What is the date? Is the 25th? Is that right?
Yeah.
The 31st is the last day that we can have it posted, which really essentially is next Friday. So we'd have to get the warning prepared. Legal would have to review, and then we need to have everybody come in and sign it prior to the end of next week.
We hope that we can move forward with this. The reason that we set up the schedule that we did with the finance committee meeting before the board meeting, that we could present to the board the budget and hopefully get approval of it so that we can move ahead in a timely way.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'll ask for a motion to.
John Marie
approve-
has a
Oh,
question.
okay.
Hi there, I'm Sean Marie from Bennington. So it may be in your minutes from the finance meeting, but the job that you are, I guess it used to be school to work, Gail Pacino, then Elaine, and you're switching that to tech. What will take the place of that, that particular area for students?
Steve, are you there?
Yeah,
Jim?
basically, we're adding a tech position because we don't have enough sections, and that's a graduation requirement. Anyone wanting to do any sort of school to work program can also do that through Southwest Tech.
And then the tech requirement has remained the same for many, 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 many years. And I know you can get it through music, you can get it through graphic arts. I'm wondering if this board has discussed or over the last couple of years, the requirement for civics. I know it's in the standards. I know it's embedded in, I don't know, one of the classes, but for many years it was talked about that with the number of history teachers you might have, that civics would be a requirement for graduation. Has there been any discussion in the last 2 years about that?
We have not changed any graduation
Yeah,
requirement.
this is a,
It's Leon, and I wanted to make sure we stop. This is not,
right.
you got it. There shouldn't be any back and forth. It's a comment, a question to be answered by the board, because this is not.
So I'm asking questions about the budget, and I guess I'll stick to the budget. So my question is also around the budget, Leon and Tim, et cetera, is what is your ratio of students to?
I'm having trouble understanding you, Sean Marie.
So can you not hear me? So I'm wondering what your population is in both the middle school and the high school compared to
This is
last year.
basically, you know, we have public comments at the beginning of the meeting.
You know,
The
Tim,
budget-
I'm sorry, you asked if
budget-
there were any questions on the budget. I'm asking questions on the budget, but you don't have to.
Right, I was asking
I'll look
board
through the
members.
minutes and see if I can find the answers. You're so accommodating. Thank you.
I'd like to move
I've,
the budget to make a motion to accept a budget.
well, just
Re-
one minute, Leon, please. All right, we are in a budget discussion, and are there any other questions from board members concerning the budget? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve budget draft 3
So moved.
So,
with
second,
with a bottom line of $28,574,267. Jackie, we had a second?
correct?
All those in, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
We have one abstention. Very good. We'll move on then to the treasurer's report. We need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
We have a second.
I'll
Thank
second
you,
it.
Fran. Have a second to the treasurer's report.
Second,
Somebody?
yes, Leon second.
We have a second. Who was that?
Leon.
Leon, thank you very much. We had a second to the treasurer's report, which was included. Are there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed or abstentions? Very good. We can then move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the
So
consent?
moved.
Thank you, Fran. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Leon. Any discussion on any of the things in that consent agenda? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed or abstentions? Very good. We can move on then to committee reports. Education, Amy?
Sure. So we had a education committee meeting tonight. It was just a short meeting. It was really informative. We had an update on the alternative education programming. Dr. Nixon kicked off the conversation, and then we had 4 staff members there, 3 teachers and a counselor. And they gave a really thorough, albeit quick report, because that's how I scheduled the meeting. I'm sorry about the short time. It was only a half hour. But I'll just give a quick rundown here. And there is some material. I'm sorry it didn't make it into the packet, but I will work with Amy and Jim to get that out to the board tomorrow. So there's going to be a soft opening of the programming, the alternative education programming, with a small group of students and the 4 staff members on the East Campus. Well, actually, I'm not, yeah, I believe it's on the East Campus. It's the space is currently being updated to accommodate the group. This coming Monday, about 15 students and the 4 staff members. Just to give everyone a rundown of what we're talking about is a different education model that's student-driven, project-based. The same standards, our educational standards, are absolutely going to be met and will be at the core of the learning model. But it's a model that puts the student's individualization at the center of their education. It's focused on that individualization, restorative practices, community partnerships, and it's project-based. It relies heavily on student buy-in. So it takes the students' interests, and the students work with the teachers to to determine what best is going to work to meet the standards and to create a positive learning environment. The eligibility for this first group, the students were identified by the guidance department and by staff, and the report from the teachers was that there was really strong feedback positive feedback from the families, which is great first step for this program. Let's see. Oh, the staff has also been working with Bennington College with the restorative justice program at Bennington College to learn more about restorative justice practices and how those can be incorporated into the students' daily lives. And I asked a question about what an ideal number would look like for this group, for this program, and they don't know, that's a work in progress. I think they're being really smart and taking it slow and using this opportunity to use.
You still there, Amy?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
You
Yes.
there, Amy?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Amy?
Can someone else tell Tim that they can
Yeah,
hear me, maybe?
Amy, I thought it was, can people hear everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought,
Yes.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting that they had gone to Rutland, who has a very successful program dealing with kids who need an alternative environment to learn. And they learned a lot from them, and I'm sure it was a very positive experience. So I'm glad that we're taking a look at other institutions that have implemented programs that have turned out to be very successful. And I applaud them for that.
Yeah. So really good work. We're really appreciative of the update. And it feels like a lot's been done in incredibly trying circumstances, and totally respectable timeline as far as I can tell. So that's great. It was just last spring that this all started coming together, I think. Isn't that right? So anyway, thank you all very much.
Well, one thing I'd also like to thank those teachers who've become very much involved in this program. It's meant extra effort on their part, and I think we're very fortunate to have the high quality of teachers involved in that program that we do, and we thank them and applaud their interest in helping the kids.
That's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. We can go down to
Tim, you didn't put policy on there, but could we get it on there for next month so we can get everybody updated?
Well, I asked Lisa about it and she said there was no report.
Who said that?
Lisa. Well, I asked Amy to ask Lisa. So maybe what I think the best thing to do, Leon, is to get in touch with Lisa, because I just, she's been awfully good about filling us in.
We will take care of that.
But we didn't forget you. We can move on then to administrator's report. We start off with Steve.
Thank you. Tonight, in honor of the fact that Dave Barrio, who has been at the high school for 42 years and who leaves us next Friday, I would like to turn over the principal's report this evening to Mr. Barrio.
Okay, some of the things that are happening. On Monday, January 25th, we'll be returning our sophomores and juniors to the building, and we're excited about that because we already have the freshmen and seniors. So this will mean that all of our students will be returned to the high school within a hybrid model. It's important that parents will be receiving letters outlining what day their child should report to the building. There's a blue team that meets Monday and Tuesday. The red team is Thursday and Friday. But if anybody's not sure, they should contact the high school at 447-7511, so we don't have people coming on the wrong color days. Beginning on Monday, we will now be offering all 4 classes per day, and the start and end times remain the same, 8:30 to 2. All right, in terms of extracurricular, athletics is currently operating basketball, Nordic skiing, dance, and cheer in phase 2, which means inter-squad scrimmaging and limited contact and practices. There currently isn't a target date for basketball games to begin. The governor will evaluate after a couple of weeks of contact practices. Nordic skiing, however, has been cleared to participate in skiing competitions with modifications. Wrestling, indoor track, and swimming are not sanctioned sports this season due to the COVID-19 restrictions. In terms of spectators, no spectators will be allowed at any games or competitions. Games will be streamed on CAT TV this winter once we move to phase 3 competition. In terms of clubs, they are active and they're meeting in remote settings. And that's it.
Dave, we have, obviously it's a sad time for us, but I'm sure it's a challenge for you to believe and start a whole new career, really, in life. I would just like to get your thoughts, if possible, on what we can expect in the future in terms of challenges that will be presented to the schools and to the board and to the community in terms of education. What should we be looking for?
Well, my concern is that some of the most at-risk kids are the ones that are having trouble with online learning, and I'm really concerned about how that's going to pan out in the future. And we're working hard. The administrative team is working hard at figuring ways to recoup credits, but there are a number of kids who are not engaged, and we send people to their homes, and these are the kids that, like I said, they were at risk before, and now we're literally going out and trying to pull them into the school. So that's a big area of concern. I think also the movement that we put in the district with trauma-informed education is very necessary. We're seeing that more and more of the schools being asked to do more and more. It's not just academics. We're doing a lot with social emotional healing. And I think that, again, we're wondering what this COVID experience how it's going to affect our kids. We're seeing it a little bit now, but I think we're going to be spending a lot of time trying to, get them back on their feet.
Do you
Thank you,
see
Dave.
this? Do you see the school playing a larger and larger role in the student's life, not only in school, but outside of school and all those things that influence their lives?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of kids who, would complain about school and, gripe as kids do, really miss it. And I think that they see the void that's in their lives because they're not in contact with other kids. They're not in contact with caring adults. They're not being motivated intellectually. So I do think that
took the oath of office today as the nation's 46th commander-in-chief, promising to help unite a country deeply divided.
I hear somebody talking in the background, but I don't know.
a
what.
political announcement. So I do think that we're taking a lot of steps to anticipate the kind of things that we're going to be dealing with, and I think that I have a lot of confidence in our administrative team and our faculty that they'll be able to do that.
Very good. Board members, are there any questions you have for Dave or comments?
I just want to say that I really appreciate Dave and all his time he spent with us. I think I've almost spent the whole 42 years knowing Dave. So just want to best of luck out there in the future.
Thank you, Leon. And I appreciate the support I got from all of you folks over the years and working on the policy committee and different things. So, and supporting my trips abroad, I appreciate that.
Are we going to get?
Dave, are we putting you on the sub list? I just wanted to know.
I think Sean Marie's still here. She's recruiting me to the tutorial center.
Congratulations, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave, and best of luck. And again, many thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Tim Payne.
Oh, sure. I have to follow Mr. Barry.
You're right.
That's great.
we should have reversed that. I should have anticipated.
I'll do this really quickly. It was my pleasure to teach at Mount Anthony Union High School starting in 1996. And Mr. Barrio and I worked a number of times outside of the regular school setting. I learned a lot. So Dave, thank you very much for all of that. And I hope that you have great adventures awaiting you as you step into retirement. I can do this really quickly. Just an update. This week, the middle school returned to school for in-person learning. I'm sure folks heard about this either through announcements through the district or through the banner. We did have to stay remote last week to address possibility of exposure in the building. I was happy to see kids and staff returning. Heard from a lot of adults that just the routine was sorely missed. It was kind of an unanticipated extension of the holiday break. So it was nice to see everybody. A reminder, as the high school had said, kids who are members of our blue group attend in-person instruction on Monday and Tuesday. And if you're a member of the red group, it's in person on Thursday and Friday. No change to schedule, still arriving at 8:30, still departing at 2 o'clock. The other announcement, athletics, we do have basketball has been waiting patiently for us to reopen. And so tryouts will be coming soon. There'll be information going out through the athletic director's office for that. Coaches have been in to check out the facility. So we're excited to see kids coming in and using the building. Nordic skiing, it's been nice to see kids up at Prospect getting used to skiing. That's been nice too. The only other thing I would add is just a reminder for moms and dads, if your student is telling you that they do not have school this Friday, they are telling the truth. It is a professional development day for teachers and for staff. So students will not be attending in-person instruction, and there will be no assignments given by teachers on that day. So if students told you everything is done, I can't vouch for them on that, but no assignments have been given on Friday, and they are not required to Zoom or log into their Google Classrooms. And that's it.
Tim, I have a question for you concerning Dave's remarks about the inability of some kids to learn remotely. And what we have in store for them to help them. Just like your comments, if you feel, as he does, that we do have a number of students that really are not progressing as we had hoped they would be, and what we anticipate in terms of helping them in the future.
Yeah, actually, Dave and I have had a number of conversations about this specifically since the start of the school year in September. I absolutely agree. I think remote learning, hybrid learning has only made it more challenging for kids who already faced challenges getting to school, engaging. It could be technology, it could be a quiet workspace, it could be responsibilities to family to supervise younger students in houses. I mean, there's a variety of things. At the middle school, we're kind of focused on the immediate piece. So we work in teams. All 7 of the academic teams in the school have identified a specific number of kids who they feel that, you know, we've got to do something extra above and beyond in order to get them back on track so that they can progress and they can move on to the next grade. Sean Marie's here this evening. She's attended a number of conversations in the last couple of weeks connecting us with the tutorial center and tutoring. We've been talking about selecting students to come in 4 days a week. Mr. Colkeen talked about we face the same challenge as the high school of going to full 100% attendance 4 days a week would be a challenge as long as the 6-foot rule stays in place. But what we're doing right now is just focusing specifically by team, groups of kids, making specific plans for kiddos with the idea that much like the high school, unlike the high school, we don't work on a credit-based system, but trying to recoup learning between now and June. And then rethinking, reimagining what a summer enrichment or summer school setting would look like for kids who weren't successful or didn't get what they needed in order to progress to the next grade. So the immediate thing is, you know, individual planning and giving kids what they need, trying to get them the progress they need. And then we'll take summer apart. And then Ms. Boudreau has talked to us pretty consistently about this is not a 3 or 4 month solution. This is a multi-year plan to make things up. And I had a very wise friend in the community stop me the other day and say, I sure wish folks would stop talking about what kids, how kids are sliding backwards. And why don't we appreciate the adults and the students who are living through a 100-year pandemic. And let's talk about that as recognizing that as an achievement and then working from there. So I don't have an answer to her wisdom, but it's something that's been sticking with me for about a week. But we have immediate projects, much like the high school, and then we're going to have to do some long-term planning as well.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions for either Tim or Steve? If not, we will move on to the chair's report. I don't have very much to think. I have 2 sad announcements to make. One is that Amy and Ron will not be running for re-election next year. And I encouraged them and board members to ask people that they feel would be productive members of the board to see their town clerk and get on the ballot. This year, you do not have to get signatures to have your name on the ballot, but we'll be losing 2 very good members of the board who have been productive and helpful, and we need good people. And anything that anybody can do to encourage people that are interested in education, are interested in kids, to run for the board.
Hey, Tim, could I interrupt you for just 1 second? This is Renee.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that the consent forms, if anybody does want to run for school board, they have to be turned in to Cassie Barbo, our district clerk, by Monday before 5 p.m.
Thank you for bringing that up. She can be reached at the town office in Bennington. It's a very simple process. So we certainly will miss those 2. We'll talk about that at our next meeting or so, but it's going to be a great loss, hard positions to fill. Are there any other comments that people would like to make at this time? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all very much. Have a good weekend and stay warm.